Okay, so what exactly is a cult then? Now that's quite a question. Does anyone join a group and then say, hey, I've just joined a cult and it's great, come and join me? Well, no. So how would you know if you or maybe a member of your family was in a cult? Well, sadly, if you're already on the inside, you probably wouldn't know. After all, that's how cults need to operate. Unless maybe you're the leader, in which case shame on you. But anyway, so how can a member or their friends or their family tell if they are in a cult? Well, the cult word, the C word, can be very offensive to some. The word's highly emotive, and it's often very upsetting when used on members. So we need to somehow define the word cult, or some would say a high control group, or maybe a group that exercises undue influence. So let's have a look at some names, past and present. Have you heard of any of these? Which would you think were cults or not? The Moonies, there's Scientology, there's the SLA, Jonestown, Wacko, the Branch Davidians, Manson, Charles Manson, The Way, Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, Boko Haram, North Korea, child or sex trafficking, Mormons. We could go on and on. In fact, some go so far as to consider all religions to be cults. Well, there are very specific indicators of a cult or a high control group, and it's when that level of control becomes dangerous that we need to worry. So when is that? Okay, just for a minute, let's go back to the 60s, where a Professor Robert J. Lifton was researching mind control. In his 1962 book, Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism, he gave 8 indicators of cult behaviour or brainwashing. And he did this after studying at length the Korean War, Chinese prisoners of wars. And Lifton came up with these 8 indicators, and they are Milu, or environmental control, mystical manipulation, demand for purity, cult of confession, sacred science, loaded language, doctrine over person, and dispensing of existence. So that language, maybe those words don't mean a lot to you, maybe they're a little bit dated, and it's possibly quite difficult to grasp exactly what he means without reading the book. But moving forward, fast forward to 1988, Steve Hassan, himself a former Mooney cult member, published a best-selling, widely acclaimed book called Combating Cult Mind Control, which has often been reprinted and has recently actually been updated to its new 30th anniversary edition. And in the book, Steve breaks it down into a model that he calls the BITE, B-I-T-E model. We're going to take a look at that now and select the key indicators from each of the categories. So they're behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. And as we run through them, please do bear in mind that for a group to be considered a cult, it wouldn't necessarily need to tick all of the boxes. In fact, actually many cults will proudly declare, for instance, that we don't make anyone live with us in a commune, or lots of members leave us or have left in the past, so we can't be a cult. But there they neatly and conveniently sidestep and ignore all the other indicators. And ironically, that kind of thinking, that black and white thinking, is in itself quite cultish. All of the indicators within the BITE model can be a cause for concern. So let's take a closer look. Okay, so number 1 is behavior control, and that's all about controlling who you are, dictating to you where you can maybe live, who you can live with, who you can associate with, who you can perhaps partner with, who you can have sex with, is the control over the type of clothing that you can wear and what you can't wear, or hairstyles. Is your diet regulated, the type of food that you can eat and the kind of drink that you can drink? Is maybe hunger and fasting, does that become a part of it? Sleep, does the group deprive you of sleep or perhaps keep you so busy you don't really get enough sleep? Finance, money, that's often a big thing. Do they ask for your money? Do they manipulate you so that they can get it? Do they expect you to leave money to them? Leisure, holidays, entertainment, do they dictate where you can go on holiday and what you should do on holiday? Perhaps they suggest that you should spend more time on group activities. Do you have to spend a lot of time with the group getting indoctrinated? Are things very repetitive, ritualistic almost? Do they maybe use the internet and multimedia as a means? Do you have to get their permission for major decisions in your life, or are you expected to decide things a certain way? Do they try and control your thoughts, your feelings and your activities? Is there a kind of reward system or punishment system in use, and do they encourage you to spy and tell on others, particularly things that you might have even been told in confidence? It's all about instilling a dependency and an obedience to the group. In extreme cases, they could even threaten to harm your family and your friends, or even, in really extreme cases, to be raped and or beaten. Okay, so number 2 is information control, and this one's all about deception. Do they deliberately withhold information? Do they distort information and lie to you? Do they minimize or discourage access to information that they haven't produced themselves? And this would usually especially be information on the internet, TV, radio, books, articles, newspapers, etc. that ex-members may have produced. In fact, anything critical of them. They might also keep you so busy that you don't even have the time to think and investigate things. They could control you through modern phones, iPhones, iPads, cell phones, with texting, calls, internet tracking. Do they break things down to them and us, insider and outsider? Okay, the third category then is thought control. They expect you to accept and internalize the group's doctrine as the absolute truth. Their map of reality is reality itself. Very black and white thinking. They can decide between good and evil, and there's only two. You're either with us or you're against. And they usually use something called loaded language, so cliches and little sentences which constrict knowledge, and they actually stop critical thoughts forming, and reducing quite complex things into just simple buzzwords, things like the way, the truth. And of course you must only have good and proper thoughts. Some use hypnotic technique, chanting, meditating, excessive praying, speaking in tongues, singing as well as chanting, singing and humming. The rejection of science and rational analysis, critical thinking and constructive criticism. Can you ask open questions about the leader or the group of leaders, their doctrines or policies and how they've come up with them? And can you say that other belief systems are quite legitimate and people are welcome to have them?
Jika Anda seorang Kristen yang ingin mendukung channel ini mencegah penyesatan organisasi Saksi Yehuwa, tolong tekan tombol like, karena semakin banyak like maka YouTube akan merekomendasikan video ini secara otomatis kepada lebih banyak orang Kristen lainnya.
the fourth one then is emotional controls. And again, very often modern media, film, video is used to gain emotional control over members, and they make you feel that the problems are always your own fault, never the leadership or the group's fault. And in fact, often they may well blur the actual distinction between the leadership and God, or the higher authority himself. They make you feel guilty, unworthy, a sinner, identity guilt kind of thing, that you're not living up to your potential. Maybe your family's deficient, you come from a bad background and your past is very suspect, with that fear of thinking independently always there, and seeing the other people as part of the outside world and enemies, and if you're with them you might lose the prize, lose your salvation, and if you go elsewhere you'll be shunned and not spoken to by even family members. You may have heard about love bombing and the way new members are treated, with lots of extra attention and praise, and certainly not revealing to new members the more extreme thoughts and practices of the group. Another common one is phobia indoctrination, irrational fears. They'll make you scared of demons and things like that. Tell you that there's no happiness or fulfillment that you can possibly get outside the group. And the previously mentioned one, that fear of being rejected, shunning. And do they say that any that have left a weak, undisciplined, not spiritual, worldly, brainwashed, have been got at by their family and other stuff that the world can offer. Okay, so that's a brief summary of the 4 categories from Steve Hassan's BITE model then. Sometimes the indicators may overlap. So if you've got concerns that you or your loved ones, family, friends may be in a cult or group like that, then what can you do? Well, that really is your next steps. Certainly, firstly, remember that the internet is your friend here. No matter what any cult leader may say or try to say to you. And of course, you don't have to believe everything that you find on the internet. We all know that by now. You can weigh up any evidence that you find from multiple sources. You can make up your own mind. That's what true control is all about. And it's also important to remember that, sadly, no matter how clearly you may have come to see it, confronting established cult members with facts will almost certainly have little effect. This is what cognitive dissonance is all about. Our minds don't like to be confronted with conflicting ideas. Look it up, look up cognitive dissonance. It's a very interesting subject all on its own. So if you want to understand and know more about cults and mind control, then the key is understanding mind control itself. And for that, Steve's book is the resource, the essential reading. I can thoroughly recommend it. You can also visit his website, Freedom of Mind. And of course, as with everything these days, you will find the book on Amazon. So thanks for watching. Hope that's been useful. Many thanks. Bye.